So as we're getting started with how to look great in the inbox, a couple of quick notes. If you're new to the program, my name is Lorraine Ball, and I own a marketing company called Roundpeg. We are an authorized reseller for Constant Contact, and I'm really grateful that they have sponsored this series so that I can offer all of these presentations at no charge to participants. I'm also excited to be a reseller for Constant Contact because I think that their tools allow me to do the kind of email marketing that I know is effective. If you're not currently using the product and you'd like a free trial, be sure to reach out after the program. So today, this is day 4 in our email marketing bootcamp, how to look great in the inbox. If you have missed any of the other sessions, drop me a note. We're recording all of them. First impressions matter. And I love this slide because there's a huge difference between that sad little flower and this full bouquet. And clearly one makes a much bigger impression than the other, and that's what you want to do with your email. There is a huge difference between that wilty little flower and that really attractive bouquet, and there's also a huge difference between a simple text email and email marketing. And we're going to focus on email marketing. Now, there is a time and a place for simple, quick emails. And if you're doing one-to-one communication, a simple, straightforward message is fine. But when you're trying to deliver more of a marketing message, sending something that looks good is going to be much more effective. And as you're thinking about your email, one of the things that we know, and we've really seen a change over the last few years, is the impact of email, the impact of mobile on email. Today, we know that 51% of emails are opened on mobile devices. And what that means to you is that you have to be considering mobile when you're designing your emails. It's not enough to simply look at your email on your desktop and go, well, that looks great on my great big monitor. Because if it doesn't look good on a small mobile device, you're not going to get the results that you want from your email. When email doesn't look good on mobile, we know that almost 80% of people who get that email will simply delete it. They look at it, they can't read it, they move on. And worse yet, we've seen statistics from Blue Hornet study that says that 30% of people who get an email that doesn't look good on mobile, not only will they delete that email, but they very likely will unsubscribe from your newsletter, and you'll lose the opportunity to send them a message the next time you have something to say. So today we're going to talk about the 7 don'ts of email design. We're going to talk about branding, hard-to-read fonts, wrong colors, disorganized emails, images, shareability, and mobile. Let's get started. Branding. You need to look consistent everywhere. When people get your email, it needs to represent your brand. We're going to return again and again to these 2 email newsletters from the Half Moon Yoga Studio, kind of their before and after. And what you see in the before is sort of this kind of disjointed mess. There's colors and fonts, and if you're familiar with the Half Moon Yoga Studio, you might actually recognize that. But if you're a new customer prospect, you don't really know who this is coming from. And it doesn't really reinforce the branding. Half Moon Yoga has got some great branding. They've got some nice colors with green and purple. They've got a nice logo. And you have an opportunity when you are creating an email to use the colors and fonts associated with your brand to create a professional impression that looks like you. Everything from the choice of color in your background to the placement of your logo to even the little call to action buttons. And we're going to talk about all of these things, but all of these pieces together create a professional impression that is consistent with your brand. And you want to think about how you will be most recognizable everywhere. And this is more of a big picture question. As I move from Facebook to Twitter to LinkedIn to your email, do you look the same? Are you using the same colors and textures? Are you using the same fonts and images? They don't have to be exactly the same, but they need to be consistent. If you drop into the Roundpeg website, you'll see this peg, this kind of nut and bolt texture on a lot of our website and in a lot of our branding. Sometimes it's larger or smaller, but it's almost always there, pulling everything together and uniting the images. Using your branding doesn't mean that you are exactly the same everywhere, but it means that you're similar. So here you've got this Baked by Melissa, and you can see here's her website, her Facebook page, and her email newsletter. Each of them features the same cupcakes, but it's not the same photo. She's used an image that's more that has more white space around it for the home page. She's got this great array of cupcakes on the Facebook page, and in her email newsletter she's got a close-up image. So as someone clicks from here to here or from here to here, it all feels familiar. It feels like you're staying in the same family. You haven't sort of landed on some new planet. And that's important because you don't want to confuse your customers. You don't want them thinking, wait a minute, where did I just end up? Now, I will tell you that I think she has made a mistake on her Facebook page. She's got this cute little cupcake icon. I think it would be much more effective if she filled the space with the cupcake icon, because Baked by Melissa appears right next to it. She doesn't need both the logo and the avatar. As you're thinking about your social media, kind of keep that in mind, that on the social platforms, that teeny little avatar, you want it to be as big as possible so it's recognizable. Okay, let's talk about font. Again, we're coming back to our newsletter, and you see some before and after. On the left, you see several different styles of font. You've got this decorative font up here. You've got some metallic. You have some bold. This looks like a typewriter style. This looks like another font here, and another font here. This is visually jarring and actually hard to read. Here, what you see is that we've streamlined it, and we're actually using one font throughout. My recommendation as you're working on your newsletters is no more than 2. Most companies have 1 or 2 fonts in their logo, and I would try as much as possible to match those fonts. Now, let me give you a disclaimer here. There are some fonts that are not easy to read. They look great in your logo, but they're way too swirly or too hard to read in text. When you have that sort of situation, you want to look for something that is in the family but easier to read. Look for a minute at the Roundpeg logo. The word round, that font is actually a font called Clarendon. It is a big, fat, round font that looks great in our logo. But when you write more than 1 or 2 words in that font, they're really hard to read because the letters are just so big and so round. And so often instead of using that font, I might opt for something like Times Roman or Book Antiqua, which are much, much more readable, but have the same general style. So if your logo font is a little bit too intricate, look for something that's a little bit more streamlined and simple. And make sure your fonts are mobile friendly. There are some display fonts that when they get really small, again, you can't read them on a mobile device. When you're trying to decide what kind of font you should be using, the first decision that you need to make is between serif and sans serif. This font is a true serif, a sans serif font. All of these have got little serifs. What are serifs? Serifs are the decorative tails at the bottom of the letters. Now, the truth is, if you're reading a manuscript, if you're reading a book, it is significantly easier to read if the book and if large blocks of text are actually written in these serif fonts, because these little tails pull your eye across the page. The problem is that it's not the case online. Again, these are the serifs, the little tails. Serif fonts tend to be best for printed material. They're harder to read online. And again, it's because these tails, when the fonts get smaller and smaller, particularly on mobile device, the print gets a little bit fuzzy. Some fonts that you may have heard of and that are often commonly used, Baskerville, Georgia, Times Roman. If your brand has a serif font, and we see this a lot with banks and financial institutions, traditional companies, law firms love serif fonts. It's okay to use them for your titles, but don't use them in your text. Serif font is significantly easier to read online. It's ideal for websites and for small text. And popular serif fonts are Arial, Helvetica, Verdana, Tahoma. What you're looking for is a very clean, straight font. It is much, much easier to read on mobile devices. And even on the web in general, though monitors are better back in the day, and I'm going to date myself a little bit, older monitors used to flicker a little bit. And if you were trying to read text and you had a little bit of flicker in your monitor and the text would kind of jump a little bit, it was easier to lose your place. So that's one of the reasons why we've seen this shift to serif fonts for the bulk of text online. Okay, this is sort of before and after. And I wish I could tell you that this is some crazy example that we created just for the presentation. But people actually do this. They clutter it up with way too many fonts. The problem with this kind of layout, number one, is I don't know where to look. When we talk about color later in the program, you'll see why this red on blue is such a bad idea. But you also just have way too many fonts. You've got a, I don't know, even know, well, in this one text box, you have 3 different fonts just in the box. It's way too hard to figure out where to go. So switching over here, Sunset Travel. When possible, use your logo fonts. Use a little white space. Don't be afraid to create a little bit of air in the design. This actually allows people, especially when we shift to mobile, it really allows things to shift around and still maintain their readability. If you're going to use all caps, use them sparingly and use them when they really count. For example, this Book Now button, I think this is perfect. This is the most important thing on this entire page, and they've got it boxed out, and they're using that all caps to drive your attention there. Oops. I'm not sure that I love the all cap for this longer title. That's one of the things we learn to read in upper and lower case, and our brains kind of take cues from the visual. When you're doing a sentence in upper and lower case or a longer paragraph, it's harder to read. It does feel a little bit like you're shouting. I think that's why it's okay to do it here on the Book Now button or on the individual cities. I would make this probably upper and lower case just because it's easier to read a complete thought when you have that upper and lower case. Okay, let's shift over and let's talk a little bit about colors. When it comes to design, less is more. I mean, you've got, on this one, you've got this green, you've got black and gray, and there's really no rhyme or reason for the colors. They're not on brand. Instead, pull your color cues from the logo where possible. In a lot of our emails, we use the traditional Roundpeg teal and blue, and I have added an orange for my call to action buttons. It really kind of pulls attention a little bit, but I don't go too far from that. You want to stay with just a few colors, two or three colors, because remember, you're not trying to get someone to pay attention to your colors, you're trying to get them to pay attention to your messages. Okay, things to keep in mind when you're thinking about color. 85% of people say that they buy a product because of the color. Color increases brand recognition by 80%. You see a color and you're like, oh yes, that's Cheerios. And 40% of people in the world say blue is their favorite color. So color has impact, color has meaning, and you need to be making choices about color deliberately and not by accident. Here's a look at some different colors and kind of what they mean and where you should be using them. In general, yellow tends to be associated with optimism and youth. It actually is a great way to get the attention of window shoppers. As people are walking by, if they see yellow signs in a window, if they see yellow signs in a storefront, they're going to look at it. So yellow used sparingly in your email can pull attention to a particular part of the newsletter or part of the email. Red is both good and bad. It increases, when people are shown the color red, they actually have an increase in their heart rate. It creates a sense of urgency. It is associated with sales and clearance. The challenge with red is it is also associated with stop signs, danger, and warning. So I probably would recommend that you not use red, but that you use orange instead. Okay, this next box is kind of funny because somehow in the transition to this template, my blue text turned orange. Pretend that box was blue, because as we talk about blue, blue is just a great color because it conveys this sense of trust and security. It tends to be associated with banks, with financial institutions, with legal firms. So for messaging, and it's also highly readable for text. You can use dark blue instead of black and your text is going to be very readable. Green tends to be associated with wealth and relaxation, and surprisingly, it is the easiest color for the eyes to process. Dark greens work really well as black substitutes, and brighter greens tend to have, again, that attention-grabbing high visibility, particularly online. I think that's why so many internet companies have that green in their logo. Orange tends to be perceived as a little bit more aggressive. It is great for calls to action. Subscribe, buy, sell, do this. Hey, I'm talking to you. Pay attention. That's kind of what orange does. Black tends to be associated with luxury marketing. Black and white photos tend to be a little bit classier when you're selling high-end products. That black and white image tends to sort of just escalate the look a little bit. If you're using black, that is a place where a red or a bright green button looks really well on a lot of black and white photography. You have to be careful about using orange in your calls to action if you're using black and white, because they can slip over a little bit to kind of that Halloween feel. Pink is definitely girly and feminine. You see it used a lot in marketing that is particularly directed at younger women. Purple is typically associated more with soothing. Lighter shades of purple are soothing and calm. You see it in a lot of beauty product marketing. Strong purples are actually power colors for women. So if you are targeting professional women, if that's your niche, go purple, not pink. If you can't read it, neither will your customers. And so even good colors mixed together can create this really hard to read effect. You want to avoid extremely bright color combinations. You know, this red on green or purple on pink. The colors sort of vibrate and they fight with each other. Textured backgrounds. You need to be really careful if you're going to put text on top of a picture, because what happens is you end up with, you know, like here, you've got the letters right on top of his nose. If you're going to use a texture, mute it down. Put a little bit of a screen on top of it to really scale it back. Avoid using too many colors because it can just be visually overwhelming. And avoid putting like light text on a light background or dark text on a dark background. So you've got kind of this white on white. I actually think the black on green is not bad here. I would take the green down maybe a little bit. Same thing here. If you switched to a little darker blue, not this kind of sharp, but a more of a true navy, you could very quickly make this something that would be easier to read. And you can tell right away. Red text, you have to be, you have to be really careful because red is probably one of the harder colors to read. So if your brand is some color and red, make sure your font is big, make sure it's on a white or a very, very light background, because otherwise the reds are going to be completely impossible to read. Always look for that good contrast. White works really well on a lot of backgrounds. The darker your button, the better the white is. I don't think this is all that good where you've got kind of these mid-tone on mid-tone. I probably would want to go much darker on these really light backgrounds. If you are just starting out and you have a logo and you're trying to pick colors that go with it, or if you're trying to figure out what color your logo is, there are lots of tools that you can use that will give you that hexadecimal formula. Now, if you're using a Mac, there's something called the digital color meter, but if you're using a PC, you can go to colorcorp.net/download, download this tool. Then you upload an image and you simply use the eyedropper and it will tell you what the formula is for that color. It will give you the RGB, which is what you'll use in your Word and PowerPoint documents, and it'll give you the hexadecimal formula, and that's what you're going to use on web and on your email marketing. Also, if you're just starting out, I mean, obviously I would love to say to you, well, of course you need to use a professional designer, let them pick your colors. But if you're just starting out and you're not ready to take that step, there are some tools, Color Schemer and Adobe CC, where you can put in one color as a starting point, and the tool will sort of give you a series of colors that look good with your primary color. They'll give you a color palette that you can use and use consistently. All right, moving past color, let's talk about organizing your information. When we first started doing newsletters 15 years ago, we basically took the design of the printed newsletter, that 2-column format, and put it in an email. And that worked great for a really long time. It doesn't work anymore. The biggest reason it doesn't work is that we are in a mobile world, and when you are using 2-column formats, stuff either gets really small or it shifts to the bottom. The 1-column format makes it much easier to read, and quite honestly, even on a desktop, the ability to scroll from topic to topic to topic, instead of having these images fighting for my attention, or these copy blocks fighting for my attention, having a nice streamlined 1-column information presented is much easier to read and consume. Now, the challenge is that it requires you to make the tough decisions. You have to decide which is most important. Which of these images needs to be on top? Which of these messages needs to be on top? You have to pick a favorite child. Now, one thing I'm going to tell you as you're sort of organizing your information, if you are using an email newsletter, not just to inform, but to create registrations, clicks, getting people to do something, you need to have your sign up button or your call to action button in the top third of the email. This needs to be on the screen when they open it. Okay. You need to think about a template for your message. Now, a lot of our newsletters look like this. They're pretty simple, a little bit of text, button, text, button. This is a good format for B2B communication. There's not a lot of pictures and images, but it's pretty and professional looking. Oops. Now, if you're selling a product, you definitely want to think about maybe more pictures in your newsletter. Personally, I think this one has maybe a few too many. We actually have seen some studies from Constant Contact that show the more choices you give people, the less likely they are to choose anything. And so I might actually go with 1 big and 3 images and then see the rest of our collection. And for nonprofits, the thing that I think people often forget is that people donate to causes because they emotionally connect to the offer. So it's really important, I think, to use a strong, compelling image. Something else you will notice in these newsletters that we're using buttons, not hyperlinks, especially when I'm on a mobile device, but even on my desktop. It's easier to hit the button than it is to precisely click that little text link. This is not an image of a button. This is actually a text box, and that's really important because 25 to 30% of people do not download the images with the emails. They pull them in as text only. If you have inserted a picture of a button, you run the risk that the most important thing in your email, the click, buy now, donate now, is not visible. So always, always, always use, this is, like I said, this is a text box that is colored with the text on top of it, so it always displays. When you're using images, make good choices. Again, let's go back to our half moon yoga. First thing, the first image, the logo. It should be typically center or left, certainly large and visible. The second thing is, if you are using a stock photograph, remember to download the final version and not use the comp with the watermark on top of it. Make sure you size it correctly to fit in your newsletter. Don't stretch or shrink images, and quite honestly, these images are so small, they're not really adding any value. Some rules on images. Number one, people, again, Constant Contact in some of their surveys have seen that 82% of people pay more attention to an email with a picture. So don't be afraid to use pictures. But when you use pictures, remember the alt text. For those people who don't download the image, so they don't see this image, you don't want them to just get a great big square box with an X. You want to have a message here for them. Book your trip now. You know, ride with us in March, whatever. 3 or fewer images will have the highest click rate. So if you start upping it to 5, 6, 7 images, you're likely to get less interaction. The best images are real people, real places and things. If you have to use stock photography, that's always a choice, but anytime you can get pictures of your employees, your customers, your products, it's going to be way more compelling. And this, don't use images of your content. What this refers to, and I've seen a lot of people, and you've probably seen people do it, they've created a PDF or a JPEG for an event, and all of the information is in the picture, and then they just insert the picture in the middle of the email, and they're like, we're done. If I don't download the image, all I have is one great big blank screen. You can put text on top of a picture as long as it's actual text. The same is true for your website. When you insert a graphic that has text on it, search engines can't read the text. It just comes up as a picture. So, pictures are pictures, text is text. And use video. And this is really cool. We've seen, and I've done some tests, when you mention video in your subject line, people are 50% more likely to read emails that include a video. So embed a video in your email. And Constant Contact now, I've seen a couple of trials with this. You can also embed an animated GIF. So if you've got just a simple animated GIF, you don't want to do something that's too busy and too flashing because it'll be distracting, but a subtle animated GIF to call attention to something works really well. If you're creating video and you're sending it in an email, keep the video under 90 seconds and actually tell people, hey, watch this short 1-minute video or 90-second video, so they know kind of what they're committing to. What kind of video? Videos for product demos, testimonials, promotions. You know, sending an email to a customer we're sending an email to a customer to get them to try a product. What's better than having another person telling them about how cool the product is? I just saw a note. Thanks so much for the comment, Richard, that he's seen that there's a 7 times multiplier on video over photos. So it's really compelling if you can do it. We're certainly seeing that on Facebook and in social media, so I expect the same would be true in emails. When you're putting pictures in your email, you want to pick the right size. Now, these dimensions are the ones that we use for Constant Contact. I think it's fairly similar with a lot of other platforms. 600 by 200 is awesome for your header. It gives you a nice topper to the email without taking up too much room. For the images inside your newsletter elsewhere, if you start with 600 pixels wide and then let it go as big or as small as it needs to be, it'll always size appropriately. Next thing, avoid copyright issues. And I have seen this, I've seen it more on websites, but I've also seen it on emails. People think, well, I found that image online. If it's on the internet, I can use it, right? Wrong. You can only use images that you have the rights to. Those can be your own pictures or stock images that you have purchased or acquired from a free stock image site. I have seen people, and this is more on the website, but I always tell this story. There was a not-for-profit. They found on Creative Commons a photograph of the skyline of Indianapolis, and they downloaded it and used it as a header on their website. Unfortunately, the image was actually the property of a professional photographer who sold his work, and he had not loaded it to Creative Commons, someone else had. When he found the image on their website, he sent them a note and said, hey guys, that's my picture, you've used it, you need to pay me for it, and oh, by the way, I'm an attorney, so we're going to go to court on this. And he wanted $1,500 for the image. Legally, it was his image, it was copyrighted, and they had to pay the fee. Now, they ended up telling their members what happened, and they actually did a fundraiser to buy the image, but still, it's an expensive mistake. I have another friend who downloaded an image and used it on her website, and it turned out that the image was the property of National Geographic, and they were not happy about their image being used. And if you think no one will find you, there is a tool called TinEye, T-I-N-E-Y-E. I can upload a photograph and I can find every use of that photo anywhere on the net. So you can be found, and it gets ugly if you are. Buy your photos, take your own photos. Do not just grab photos from anywhere. Now, the cool thing is that Constant Contact has their own stock photo library. So if you're looking for a particular topic, many of the images are free. Some of them you might pay $5 for, but then you have the rights to the image. You can also upload from your computer, or you can upload from Facebook or Instagram and add it to your library. Okay, you've created this great email. It looks good. You're ready to send it out, and only a few people open it. Don't let the magic stop there. Share, share, and share again. Emails with social sharing buttons increase click-through rates by 150%. So make sure you add a social share. Use the share bar and ask people to like, share, retweet, and pin your newsletters. add social media buttons so people know how to find you on social media. And the buttons are going to be way more effective than this little text. These visual icons, we recognize them, we're drawn to them, we're more likely to click on that than this little hard-to-read hyperlink. This is another thing that I really like about Constant Contact. They've got a built-in social share tool. So after I create a campaign, I can actually schedule Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter updates right from my dashboard. It will automatically pull a little bit of a message and an image. I can change out the image if I want. And then once I schedule it, this is how it'll appear in the timeline. This is how the newsletter will appear on Facebook, and when they click, it will take people back to the newsletter. Why do this? Because your social community and your email community may not be the same people. You may have a lot of folks who are connected with you on social media who had no idea that you actually offer an email newsletter. And so this is a great way to grow your list. The world, my friends, is going mobile. And so when you design your newsletter, you want to look at it not just on your desktop, but you want to look at it on your phone. And you can see that the two-column format really doesn't work because these start to get really small. You want to make sure that your information is organized, easy to scroll, with a nice sign-up or action button in the top third of the email. You want to avoid some of these mistakes. Lengthy text, tiny fonts, and multiple columns. This is not really all that long, but you see what happens even to 2 or 3 sentences? It gets really hard to read. You can't really find your place. So when you're designing newsletters, remember to create, even if they're a little bit unnatural, some paragraph breaks to create some space. 2 columns does not work on your phone. Instead, keep it simple. Less is definitely more. Headline, sentence, break. The mistake they made here is I would put the Register Now button and then the details underneath. Definitely, definitely 1 column only. Make sure that the image is not bleeding off the screen, and make sure that you're not creating hard to find or hard to read calls to action. Here you go. Here's your title, the properly sized image. Again, I would actually move this button up here. Cool thing is, I love this. There's an app for that. Constant Contact actually has an app, so you can even build an email on your phone. Now, I'm going to tell you that I still prefer to build it on my desktop, but like for this morning's email, I had an existing email. I just needed to copy it and change 1 link. I could do that on my phone from the coffee shop. The thing that I really like about the app is that I can check my results and I can update my lists from my phone. So let's put it all together, kind of a quick review of all the things you need to keep in mind to create great-looking emails. Here's your email. Yesterday we talked about subject lines. Keep your preview pane in mind. Maximize the top part of your email. Remember to pay attention to your subject line. Choose a template that fits your message. Make sure it looks good and that you're designing it for mobile. Place your logo left or center. They say never right. Our brand design is right. So we kind of break that rule, but if you don't have a good reason for that, go left and center. Use your brand colors. Make it look like you. Communicate through pictures. People will respond to pictures, But anytime you put a picture in your email, make sure it's clickable. Make sure it goes somewhere, and make sure you have alternate text. Less is more. Focus on relevant content. 3 or fewer images and about 20 lines of text have the highest click-through rate. Well, what if I've got lots more to say? If you've got so much more to say, give me a teaser here and then offer me the option to click through. You're going to find out pretty fast how interested people really are in your message. One of the things that I hear over and over again from my readers is, you know what, Lorraine, I get your email every week and I always read it. Why? Because I can open it up and read it really fast. I know I'm going to get something of value really quick and then I can get on with my day. If I know that every time I open your email there's this great big long thing, I'm going to be more likely to put it aside to read later. And as we talked about yesterday, later often becomes never. Your key call to action, they say should be above the scroll line. I'm going to say top third. And if you're going to create calls to action, use buttons, not text links as much as possible. Make sure you add your social media buttons. Now, let's go back and look at that for a moment. So here's your assignment. Go back and take a look at the last email you sent and go through and redesign it, incorporating some of the things we've presented today. What's next? We'll be talking about auto response campaigns, and for those of you who are not currently using Constant Contact, we also will have a Constant Contact demonstration. Do you have questions? You can feel free to ask them now or send me a follow-up note. Also, before you leave, be sure to grab a copy of the Look Great in the Better Looking Email PDF, or you can grab it from the email that we sent you this morning. As always, feel free to reach out to me after the program. Thanks so much. Tomorrow,